Hello, and welcome to How to Succeed in Business During a Pandemic. I'm Judie Knoerle, your host, and I'm delighted that you could join us today. The purpose of the show is very simple. It's to introduce you to some people who have been not only surviving during this time, I call it the era of COVID-19, but actually thriving. And our hope is that by having them share their stories, it will help you in your business. The people who you'll be meeting are entrepreneurs, professionals of really from all different kinds of industries. And as for me, I'm a marketing professional. That means I'm a copywriter and a marketing strategist. So this show is kind of a natural fit for me because in my job, I interview people, find out what they do, and help them talk about their goods and services in writing and also on social media and copy content and websites so they can get new customers. Our guest today is a very special person. Her name is Judie Knoerle, and she is, and I want to get her title incorrectly, Judie is the owner of Red Cap Learning, which is and she's an international business consultant. And she's been doing this for years. She's an absolute expert. I met Judith at a networking group, and she was coaching literally everybody in the room on how to be a great networker and presenter. So without much ado, I'd like to introduce her to you now so she can tell you about her business and her background herself. Judie, welcome. Sorry about all that back and forth.
Thank you. Nice introduction. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, we're really delighted to have you. And I alluded to, I just want to tell folks a little bit more about your credentials, that you've got a master's degree in educational psychology and 30 years of experience in sales program design, facilitation, and coaching. And all of that, I think, is very important. There are coaches and there are coaches. You can get all kinds of certifications and degrees in coaching. But having someone with real life experience who's been doing it as long as you have and as well as you have, I think is really important.
Well, thank you. I did get that master's degree in educational psychology. I thought there for a while I was going to become a child counselor, marriage, child, family counselor, but that pretty quickly derailed. I met this wonderful person that was working for a highly regarded training and development company, and I just fell in love with that side of the business. So I went corporate rather than clinical. Very glad I did that. And so I switched. I started my own company. I worked for Wilson Learning for almost 30 years, for heaven's sake. So I obviously it was a good match for me, but I wanted to go on my own. I formed Red Cup Learning and have in fact loved it and am using that psychology degree way more than I am anticipated, because you and I both know that giving presentations can be very stressful. So I'm very glad to have that background for the work that I do.
When you started, when you made that switch, and I'm assuming you made it because it was just, you kind of wanted to deal with grown-ups in business versus,
yes.
Okay. But then you became an entrepreneur. Was that always in the back of your head of kind of controlling my own life and running my own business, or was that something that developed within you during the time you were working?
You know, I've had such a mixed background. I've never worked for a company where I had to go into an 8-to-5 job ever. I've just never had that type of work experience. Worked for small companies. I mean, Wilson was 300 people. And I was often a contract instructor. So it was like building my own business. I had to sell myself. I had to prove myself. So I don't know any other way to do it. I'm not so sure I could wake up every morning and go to the same, well, not that we're going to the same buildings anymore, but I'm not so sure I could do that. I don't know that it was necessarily the entrepreneurial spirit, but I do like being my own woman. I love working my own company. And as we all know, small businesses have ups and downs. You don't get that steady paycheck all the time. It's challenging, and I do believe your nature has to be somewhat patient to know that it may not be busy now, but it will be in a couple months. And I rather like that.
I think one of the reasons that people are having such a hard time today is that, and I always, as a coach, I've always pushed the fact that we are all in business for ourselves. And at some point or other, it kind of hits us in the face. It may be when you get the pink slip and it's during a recession and you just can't scramble onto the next job because
That's right.
a job. And right now, I really feel what's happened today is the world has stopped for everyone at the same time. And we're all trying to kind of find our feet and the way we connect with each other. And the people that are doing the best are people that have always seen the world that way, as a world that stops and starts, and we're the one who makes it start again. How have things changed in the way we present ourselves and we used to? I mean, we used to have big meetings and Joe Blow would get a chance to present and post press the boss. So is that still going on, but but electronically, or has that whole system just kind of gone plooey and something new come in place?
I work with a lot of very large corporations whose campuses are completely empty now.
Mm.
They aren't going into the buildings. They can't go into the buildings. And those that I've spoken with have determined that a significant percentage of their business will probably remain virtual. Certainly some people will go back. I work with a lot of research and developers, a lot of scientists and engineers who, of course, need a lot of presentation skills coaching. Mm-hmm. But those people are in the labs, but the traditional staff are not. Some companies are finding they're working pretty well out of their homes. Others bring back a certain percentage. But I do believe this virtual life is here to stay. And what I have found even more interesting is most of the companies are pretty excited about that. They're looking for new ways to interact with their customers. Not that their in-house meetings were all that great, but they are looking for and hungry for new tips and tricks on how to keep their audiences engaged in this crazy virtual world. Because as you know, there's that term now, I think it's called I'm zoomed out.
That one I haven't heard, but I'm not at all surprised.
Too many Zoom meetings. So how do you keep people engaged? How do you get to know your customers when you are looking into this crazy camera or you're looking at 16 squares? It's really tough. And I don't know, Wendy, I've found it to be I've had a pretty seamless transition from in-class to virtual training. And I found that it was mostly my own perceptions that I really had to challenge. Because had you asked me even 8 months ago, I would have said, you've got to be in the classroom. You've got to be in front of them. I need to have you standing. I need to be able to stand next to you and see you and give you feedback and record you. And the series of trainings that I've conducted so far for these same corporations, they have an opportunity to give a final presentation. And those presentations are as good as though we had been together for 2.5 days. So I really have come around to say people can learn virtually if there's application to what they're learning in the real world, if they can see themselves applying that, it seems to be working. So I'm happy. I don't have to get on an airplane right now. I don't have to lug heavy bags and put things in the overhead compartment. It's nice. And I'm getting good results.
I love Zooming, and I'm a networker who networks. Before Zoom, I would drive 45 minutes every morning to get to different networks.
I know.
And I hated that. I hated having to get up so early, and I'm not good at driving, so it was a pain. So I'm loving this. This is just wonderful for me. But aside from that, in terms of companies going back, I don't think it makes any sense for them to go back, aside from the fact, even if this virus were just to disappear overnight, which of course we all know it's not going to, it's going to hang in for at least, the figure I heard was 3 years at the minimum. So that's a complete change for everyone for a long time. And but economically, I don't think it makes sense for a company to rent a big office building in the middle of the city. And it's not like people don't work at home. They do, and they're perfectly capable of working just as well, and if anything, probably concentrate even better at home.
Right.
And in terms of family life, I think it's terrific. How many times have you heard? I'm closer to my family than I've been before. I hear it all the time, and I feel it with my family.
I'm finding in business that presentation skills are really becoming a quintessential requirement for anybody dealing with both internal and external customers, because they really are mini sales opportunities. And in order to move an audience to action, which is why we even give a presentation, you've got to be perceived as competent. You've got to be perceived as confident. And if, our body language gives us away, our language gives us away, our eye contact gives us away. And if you can't figure out a way to really look strong virtually, because we've lost a whole lot of that other body language and that personal contact, you really do have to work harder to make that work now virtually. But it's going to be as critical as ever. And every company I'm talking to is trying to differentiate themselves from all the other folks out there that are virtually having meetings. So they're, in many cases, turning to me for tips and tricks and best practices. And I end up giving a lot of feedback about backgrounds, about lighting, about your body language, how you use your voice, how many ums and uhs you throw in there, because now suddenly everybody's counting. So it's critical that you really reflect back on how you're doing and get somebody to give you some feedback. Right.
But now we're going into something where here we are resuming, I've got a coffee cup on my desk, and we're
people can see your house.
But at the same time, in business, you still have to have a certain level of production value. Like your point about the background. I mean, this is a set.
Me too.
But I made sure that the shelves were arranged properly, and my camera is facing at just the right angle, and there's lighting.
That's right. You have to have some kind of presence, a professional presence about you. And, whether we're in front of a group or whether we're in front of a camera like this, sitting in our office, I've always felt that you had to be a step ahead, half a step ahead, half a step dressier, half a step more formal than the people that would be in your audience. They're looking to you as the professional. You're the expert. You're the one that's offering the advice. And you need to play the role. Critical.
It's fascinating what you do. And I think it's a very important skill set that all of us should develop, especially now. It's kind of more important now, I think, than ever before, because we don't have the same connections we had before, the chance to meet in person as we did before. So presentations have taken on a whole new importance, especially throughout our life, but especially in business. So,
Wendy, thank you again for inviting me to share all of these ideas and to have a conversation with you. I've loved it.
Good. Well, we loved having you. And next week, we will be back again, and there will be another interesting guest, and I hope you will join us then. This is Wendy Knoerle saying goodbye, and stay in and stay well. Thank you.